chosen one. Before you move on, don't ignore this message, because what you're about to hear may explain why this season of your life has felt so quiet. There was a time when your voice carried excitement. Your heart was full of dreams. Your faith felt unshakable. You believed that everything God promised would happen quickly. But then, life changed. The prayers took longer to answer. The opportunities disappeared. The people you trusted walked away. And little by little, you became quieter. Not because you stopped believing, but because you became tired of explaining why nothing seemed to be changing. Late at night, you found yourself asking, God, have I missed my moment? Today, he answers, no, I was preparing a comeback that no one could stop. Chosen one. People often misunderstand silence. They assume that because they can't see movement, nothing is happening. They mistake your quietness for weakness. They mistake your waiting for failure. They mistake your absence for defeat. But God says, silence is not always the end of a story. Sometimes it's where I write the most important chapters. Think about a caterpillar. When it enters the cocoon, the world sees nothing. No movement, no beauty, no progress. But inside, everything is changing. What looks like stillness is actually transformation. Chosen one, that has been your life. People only saw the silence. God saw the preparation. People assumed your best days were behind you. God knew your greatest days were still ahead. Chosen one. The enemy celebrated when you disappeared from the spotlight. He thought your influence was over. He believed your calling had been forgotten. He whispered, it's finished. But he forgot something. God has never needed public attention to prepare public miracles. Before David stood before Goliath, he spent years alone with sheep. Before Elijah stood before kings, he learned to trust God beside a hidden brook. Before Jesus began his ministry, he spent years in quiet obedience. The hidden season never canceled the assignment. It prepared it. Chosen one. There were moments when you wanted to quit, not because you stopped loving God, but because you stopped understanding him. You prayed, yet heaven remained silent. You knocked, yet the door stayed closed. You waited, yet the answer didn't come. Still, you remained faithful. And God says, every prayer you thought I ignored became another brick in the foundation of your future. Nothing has been wasted. Not your tears, not your waiting, not your loneliness, not your disappointment. Every painful season has been building a stronger version of you. Chosen one. God says, the comeback I'm preparing requires a person stronger than the one who first prayed for it. Years ago, you wanted the blessing. Today, you're becoming the person capable of carrying it. That's why the process took longer than you expected. I wasn't just preparing the blessing. I was preparing you, chosen one. Have you noticed how differently you think now? The things that once upset you now drive you to prayer. The opinions that once controlled you no longer define you. The rejection that once broke your heart now teaches you discernment. You are not the same person you used to be. That's what hidden seasons do. They don't just change your circumstances. They change your character. Chosen one. God says, the people who counted you out only saw your silence. They never saw my hand working behind the scenes. One day, the same people who assumed your story was over will witness the chapter they never expected. Not because you fought harder than everyone else, but because God's timing is always perfect. And when he decides to lift someone, no person can keep them down. Your comeback has already begun. You just can't see all of it yet. Chosen one. If you're still listening, then perhaps this message is reaching you at exactly the moment God intended. Because heaven says, your silence was never a sign that I had abandoned you. It was the place where I was preparing what no human hand could create. For so long, you compared your life to everyone else's. You watched people celebrate promotions. You watched families grow. You watched businesses succeed. You watched friends announce one blessing after another. Meanwhile, your own story seemed frozen. The silence became so long that even you started questioning your calling. You asked, Lord, why is everyone moving forward except me? God says, because I never designed your journey to follow someone else's timeline. Chosen one. The world teaches you to compare. But comparison is one of the fastest ways to lose your peace. When Peter asked Jesus about another disciple's future, Jesus simply replied, "What is that to you? You follow me." In other words, your assignment is not to measure someone else's race. Your assignment is to remain faithful in your own, because what God has prepared for you cannot be compared with what He prepared for someone else. Chosen one. There were days when nobody called, nobody checked on you, nobody noticed your struggle. It felt as though your presence no longer mattered. But God says, the loneliness you experienced taught you to depend on my voice instead of human applause. People's attention comes and goes, but God's presence never leaves. When everyone else became silent, He stayed. When everyone else walked away, He remained. When everyone else forgot, He remembered. Chosen one. Do you remember the last time your heart was completely broken? You thought you would never recover. You believed that chapter had destroyed you forever. Yet here you are today, still standing, still praying, still believing. That wasn't because you were strong. It was because God's grace carried you when your own strength ran out. Every scar you carry today is proof that God brought you through yesterday. Chosen one. God says, I allowed the battle because I knew the victory would reveal my glory. Anyone can praise God after receiving a blessing, but only those who truly trust Him. Continue praising Him while they're still waiting. That's the kind of faith heaven honors. The faith that worships before the miracle arrives. The faith that thanks God before the answer appears. The faith that keeps believing when nothing makes sense. Chosen one. Don't mistake God's silence for inactivity. Behind every delay, He has been arranging details you cannot yet see. The right people are being positioned. The right conversations are taking place. The right opportunities are drawing closer. The wrong doors are closing. The wrong influences are leaving. Everything is moving according to His perfect plan, even when it feels like nothing is happening. Chosen one. God says, the comeback I promised isn't just about restoring what you lost. It's about giving you something greater than you ever imagined. You thought you were asking for restoration. God was preparing transformation. You wanted yesterday back. God was creating a better tomorrow. You wanted one closed door reopened. God was building an entirely new path. That's why the waiting felt so long, because what He's preparing is bigger than what you were praying for. Chosen one. The enemy wanted your silence to become surrender. He hoped discouragement would convince you to stop praying. He wanted disappointment to become permanent unbelief. But every time you whispered, God, I still trust you, heaven took notice. Every quiet act of obedience, every unseen sacrifice, every tearful prayer has been recorded before God. None of it has been forgotten. Chosen one. Very soon. You'll begin to understand why certain things had to happen exactly the way they did. The delay will make sense. The rejection will make sense. The closed doors will make sense. Because when God finally reveals the purpose behind your silent season, you'll realize He wasn't delaying your future. He was protecting it. And the people who believed your silence meant defeat will witness a comeback that only God could have written. Your season is changing. Your story is changing. And heaven is preparing to reveal the miracle that has been growing in silence all along. Chosen one. If you've stayed until this final part, then perhaps this message found you exactly when God wanted it to. Because today, He wants you to stop seeing your silent season as a failure and start seeing it as preparation. God says, "The world thought you disappeared, but I was developing you where no one could interfere. For a long time, you felt invisible. The phone stopped ringing. The invitations became fewer. People who once needed you suddenly acted as though you no longer existed. You wondered, did everyone forget about me?" But heaven answers, "No. I separated you so that my voice would become louder than the opinions around you. Chosen one." The greatest miracles in Scripture were never rushed. Noah built the ark for years before anyone saw rain. Joseph spent years in prison before standing in the palace. David was anointed king long before he wore the crown. Lazarus remained in the tomb until everyone believed the situation was hopeless. Then, God stepped in, because God often waits until human strength reaches its limit, so His power becomes impossible to deny. Chosen one. Perhaps you've been asking, "Lord, why didn't you answer sooner?" God says, "Because if I had answered too early, you would have trusted the blessing more than the one who gave it." Waiting has changed you. You no longer pray only for success. You pray for wisdom. You no longer ask only for open doors. You ask for discernment. You no longer chase applause. You seek God's approval. That is the transformation heaven desired. Chosen one. The enemy thought your silence meant surrender. He celebrated every setback, every disappointment, every lonely night. He believed your faith would eventually disappear. But every time you whispered, "Father, I still trust you," His plans began to fall apart. Because faith that survives silence becomes stronger than fear. Faith that survives delay cannot easily be shaken. Chosen one. God says, "The comeback I have prepared is not just about restoring what you lost. It is about revealing who you have become." People are expecting the old version of you, the person who was easily discouraged, the person who constantly doubted, the person who depended on human approval. But that person no longer exists. The hidden season changed you. Prayer became your strength. Patience became your teacher. Faith became your foundation. And God's presence became your greatest treasure. Chosen one. Soon, the same people who assumed your story had ended will witness something they cannot explain. They will see peace where they expected bitterness, joy where they expected defeat, favor where they expected failure. Not because you were lucky, not because you manipulated circumstances, but because God remained faithful to His promise. Chosen one. When your comeback begins, stay humble. Don't seek revenge against those who misunderstood you. Don't try to prove anyone wrong. Let your life speak louder than your words. Remember the lonely nights that taught you to pray. Remember the waiting seasons that taught you patience. Remember the tears that drew you closer to God. Never forget the lessons hidden inside the silence. Chosen one. God says, Your greatest testimony will not be how high I lifted you, but how faithfully you trusted me while you were still waiting. Anyone can believe after the miracle, but you believed before you saw it. Anyone can worship after receiving the blessing, but you chose to worship in the middle of uncertainty. That kind of faith honors God, and God always honors those who remain faithful. Chosen one. As this message comes to an end, carry this promise in your heart. Your silence was never empty. God was building wisdom where others saw weakness. He was creating strength where others saw struggle. He was preparing favor where others expected failure. Nothing was wasted. Not one prayer. Not one tear. Not one disappointment. Every moment became part of the masterpiece God has been creating. So don't fear the future. Don't doubt the process. Don't believe the lie that you've been forgotten. Because the God who kept you hidden is the same God who is about to reveal his glory through your life. And when your comeback finally arrives, the people who mistook your silence for defeat will realize they were only watching the preparation for one of God's greatest miracles. Chosen one. Your story is not ending in silence. It is rising in victory. The same God who carried you through the hidden season is now leading you into a season of restoration, favor, and divine breakthrough. Your silence is over. Your greatest comeback has begun.